What is going on, YouTube? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture, and today we're going to be talking about how to grade comic books, going over some tips to get you all to be more versed in how to really gauge the grades of your comics, whether it's because you want to be confident of the grades of your books that you're wanting to send out to CGC or CBCS, or you just want to get more savvy as a grader. Maybe you're a seller, well, whatever the case may be. I think a lot of us really enjoy uh, learning the ability to be able to gauge the grades of our books. So we're going to be going over 3 examples today, and we're going to start off with the Strange Tales, this good-looking Silver Age Strange Tale book. Now, I've told you guys before that I really enjoy using the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics. If you don't have this book, it is a huge resource for me. I think it would be a resource for all of you guys. It's worth the investment. I think you could find it used for like $10 on Amazon or whatnot. Definitely recommend it. I've grown so much being able to grade and be confident in my grades from using this book. So we're going to talk about some specific tips to look at when looking at a book. But let's start off by the thing that I like to do whenever I take my first look at a book, and that's basically when I pull the book out of the bag and board and take my first glance at it, just looking at it, uh, cover, maybe I'll flip it over to look at the back, and then I'll just kind of gauge from my first look, and I could say, well, looking at this book, I get a mid-grade feel, right? That right there kind of allows me to settle into the book, having a more broad understanding, more of a macro understanding before I dive into the micro, um, analysis of every single defect, so to say. So once you do that, you really want to understand looking at specific defects. Now, in the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics, they do have the chart, which has the scale of how many defects are allowed per grade. I'm just going to estimate hypothetically like a 9.0, you can have 4 to 6 defects. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not looking at it right now. But another thing that matters besides the number of defects is the severity of the defect. So keep in mind, like say a 9.6 can have 1 defect. Well, if a book had a big chunk of a corner missing, that's 1 defect, right? That's not going to get a 9.6 or anything close to it. So you really have to take into consideration the severity of each defect as well. Um, when we talk about severity of defects, you probably want to look at it as a scale of 3 different types of defects. It's minor, moderate, and severe. Your more minor defects are going to be those that you look at higher grade books to say, well, I see 2 minor defects. Maybe this book can still be a 9.6, right? I see 3 minor defects, maybe a 9.4, maybe a little spine tick here, a little, a blemish right here, or something like that. When you get into moderate, you're looking at maybe a small color breaking, creases, or maybe blunting of a corner. When you get into severe, that's when you're talking about, you know, rips, obviously chunks missing, maybe like water damage, or huge blemishes, or maybe like somebody going crazy on a cover, some kid drawing a bunch of circles with a Sharpie or a pen or a pencil. Those are going to be extreme severe defects for sure. So let's get into this book, guys. This is a book that is going to have more severe defects. So let's first and foremost take a look at the overall cover of the book. Now, you guys could probably see I don't see any major color breaking creases. That's one thing that I look for off the back, is any color breaking creases, and I don't see any huge ones besides what's going on with the spine. Well, I like to leave the spine separate. I like to look at more of the bulk of the cover first. I look around the edges to see how the edges are. This bottom edge is pretty decently smooth. Then I like to come to the corners. And I don't know how much you guys can see on screen here, but that corner is not perfectly sharp. It's not too bad, actually, for a mid-grade looking Silver Age book, but it's definitely got some blunting. It's not as sharp as it was coming off the shelf. Let's look at the edge here. Um, a little bit of discoloration going along the edge, but it's decently smooth. Uh, there's no real rips coming off the edge. Hey, this is actually a really clean edge. I'm really impressed. That's smooth. But then we get to the top corner. Obviously, some rounding and blending going on. Probably a little more than the bottom corner. And then you can see a little ding right here. So I would count that as one minor defect. Um, I would count this one right here at the bottom of my finger as like a minor defect as well, probably. The top is pretty decent as well. There is color breaking a little bit right here, and that is because of a subscription fold. We'll get into that in a minute. But again, pretty decent up top until you get to right here. I don't know if you guys can see this, but let's try to get this light. This is a rip, and then it's creased up. See that? Well, here. There we go. Now you can see it. See the rip and how it's creased right here from the rip, like it got caught in, oh, see, I can pull it up. It's ripped on both sides. This is going to be, I would consider a moderate to moderate slash severe. I call it a little more than a moderate, but not hugely severe because the piece of paper is still there. Nothing's missing. But boy, is that, yeah, hanging on by a thread there. Okay. That's the biggest issue I see so far with this book. Let's look at see if we can see the spine crease. Now the spine, excuse me, not the spine crease, but the subscription fold. See if I can get it for you guys. The subscription fold, there it is. Now, it doesn't break color all the way down. It breaks a little bit of color right under Strange's boot. Well, actually kind of on the red of the cape. And I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but take my word for it. A little bit of color break from the cape all the way down. It does not break color through the center here. It breaks color slightly right in the green. And then it doesn't break color again until the black. Right. Oh, that's really hard for you guys. Right there. Okay. So I'm going to say with the press, a lot of the spine, the subscription crease can smooth out, but you're still going to see that color break. So I've seen spine creases that are obviously way worse. Not too shabby, guys. Keep in mind with the bottom too, even though that bottom was decently smooth, right there, so you see a little bit of color wear right there. So I mean, I would consider that minor, but multiple minor because so I don't know. Actually, it might be minor to moderate right there. All right, guys, let's look at this spine. Spines are very important, and if you guys could see, you could probably see those color creases, or excuse me, those spine ticks. Not all of them are color breaking though. You can see a bit of a reader's fold right in there. Right there. You can see a little bit of a reader's fold. Most of the spine creases, or spine ticks, excuse me, do not break color. But some of them do for about a half a centimeter or a couple millimeters. And then you get this color breaking around, and I don't know if you can see the color breaking again on camera, but where that reader's fold is, there's a little bit of color breaking that's going parallel with the spine. And we probably got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 color breaking spine ticks. We also have a little bit of a split right here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but take my word for it. It's split. It's about maybe a 2 centimeter split at the top of the spine, okay? It's not too bad at all. Now, let's look at the back. The back is decently white. It's not extremely dirty. It's got some yellowing down here. It's got a little bit of yellowing around the top. Again, you can see the spine has, let's get this closer to you guys. The spine does have some spine ticks. It doesn't break color, obviously, because it's white. But you can see some of those spine ticks that you saw on the front come into the back. You can kind of see that that split a little more right here. Um, the edges again are decent, pretty smooth edges. Right here, this ruffling of the edges that you see is on the inside of the pages, not to the back cover. Oh well, there's a little bit to the back cover, a little tiny ding, but most of these what's ruffled is the pages of the actual book. So I see one minor defect here. The subscription crease, you can't even really, the subscription crease is not present on the back at all. At all. There's just kind of some discoloration right here, the spine ticks, and a little bit of yellowing, okay? Now, let's go ahead and open this book up. You could see that the staples are healthy and attached to the book in full. You can see the discoloring of the inside cover right here. You could see a bit of the perching and yellowing on the pages. So when gauging page color, I mean, it's pretty much it. I would probably consider this off-white. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say off-white to white, because even though you see a slight discoloration more on the outsides, it's tough. Like right here, this is pretty white on some of these pages, but I would be surprised if this book didn't just get off-white. But I don't know. You know, it's a good chance that it could get off-white to white. Um, yeah. You know, actually, now that I think of it, you know, this could get off-white to white. You got to keep in mind, guys, that older books aren't going to be white pages. They already have a bit of a tint to them, if that's the word to use. You know, they weren't crisp white like some of the newer newsprint that they used, say in the 80s and 90s. So this definitely could be a off-white to white pages. The pages are smooth. You definitely have some rounding of the edges on the inside pages as well. There's blending going on. They're not as sharp as they were coming off the shelves. So, oh, and let's actually, I'm going to pull this up. Let's go to the center of the book. You always want to check the center fold, guys. That is key. And right here, we're checking the center fold, and you guys can see there's no rust on the staples. The staples are fully intact. Really smooth pages. They're not really parched. They're not braille. They're still really smooth and healthy. Yeah. All right, guys. So looking at this in a whole, trying to gauge this. When looking at minor defects, even the minor defect can be broken down to slight, small, very minor to minor or minimal. And when looking at this book, it's very hard to pick one thing out and say that it's small or limited or very minor. Those are going to be for your really higher grade books. So, when you look at like a very minor defect, you can look at something that's about maybe few millimeters, maybe 1/8 inch. So, you could take into consideration some of these spine ticks as very minor, but because there's so many of them, and because there's a color breaking uh, crease that runs parallel with the spine, that could be looked at as one, considerable or significant defect that can really drop the grade. So I would take this spine as one and look at it as anywhere from 4 to 8 defects. Okay, um, that's just the fact of a matter because it's all accumulated on the spine. Okay, we look at this color break. We look at this subscription crease, right? And considering that it breaks color in multiple places, I'm going to consider that probably moderate, which again could be looked at from anywhere from say 3 to 5 defects. You look at the blending of the edges, those can be minor defects, and you can count them as one minor defect here, one minor defect there. You got a couple minor defects on the corners, but then you have this rip right here, and that right there is going to be a moderate defect as well that can be looked at as one, two, three, at least 3 defects in one. So when you take into consideration at minimal, you're probably looking at, look at the spine, and this is minimal, 4, 3, 4. So that's 8, that's 11, plus the corners 12, 13, um, you know, 14, 15 with the little dings around the edges. And then if you could take into consideration what's going on with the edges on the back cover, that might be 15, 16. And then you can even maybe count the back of the spine. But when you're looking at say 16 defects, according to the Overstreet guide, 15 to 16 defects is basically anywhere from a VG or a VG plus to a good, right? So that's a wide range. You're looking at anywhere from a 2.0 to a 4.5, right? And again, I did this the best of my ability to sum up defects as either being minor to moderate or severe, and it put me in a range between good and VG plus. So I'm going to say I'm going to have to come in between there and gauge this book as say, I'm going to gauge this book as a VG minus. That's a 3.5. All right. I think it's healthy to come in the middle of where I was looking at all the defects. And I'm going to say a 3.5. Now, I can press this book, and I think this book probably can get up to a possibly a 4.0. But with this rip right here at the top that I showed you guys in the spine crease, it's going to be really tough to, I think, get a 4.0 on this book. So look, I'm going to call it a 3.5, and that's being a bit liberal with it. It could definitely come back a 3.0 from CGC, but hey, look, it presents really well. Like I said, I'm going to give this book a press, and it'll probably make it look a little better. But hey, 3.5. If I was to sell this book, I would sell it as a 3.5. If I was to send it to CGC or CBCS without pressing it, I'd be happy if I got a 3.0. Anything lower than a 3.0 would probably be disappointing to me. So there you go, guys. That's grading a more mid-grade book. Now, I said at the beginning of the video we were going to do 3, but I think we're just going to do one more, guys, because this was hefty. So I want to go over a more a higher grade, more modern book. And we're going to look at this Wolverine #1 right here, guys. This book looks really clean for the most part. Smooth gloss. No color breaking whatsoever on the bulk of the cover. So when I look at this book, I say this book is high grade. Now, when I say high grade, from first glance, that could be anywhere from probably like an 8.0 and up, okay? But this book is decently high grade. But I'm going to dive into it. And it is a black cover. And look at that smooth gloss of that black cover. Now, one thing that I notice is that there's some rippling going on. You guys can probably see right there. So the thing with the rippling when it comes to grading is you don't want, if you're sending it to CGC or CBCS or whatnot, you don't want them to see that as any kind of moisture damage. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the case because there's no staining on this book. I already looked through it. And I don't think this would be considered moisture damage. I personally don't. But because it doesn't sit flat, uh, I'm definitely going to look at that as a minor to moderate defect because it runs through the book, even to, through the pages into the back cover. So that's a minor to moderate defect, which can be seen to be up to, like probably 4 defects in one, right? But let's look at the edges. We got really sharp edges here. Really sharp edges. I mean, this one on the bottom, the top one is like immaculate. It is absolutely immaculate. The bottom one, I'm going to say slight blending, like not 9.6 sharp. Slight blending there. But other than that, the edges of the book are clean. The bottom is clean besides the rippling. If we look at the spine is nice and smooth. There's no reader's roll. The edges are smooth, but if you guys could see this here, there's a big spine tick right there, and that's color breaking. That's, man, I mean, that's minor to moderate right there of a spine tick. But you got a couple others that don't color break. One, two, three. There's a decent sized one. Doesn't color break though. So you got maybe like 4 spine ticks running throughout there. Nothing more on top. But that big one's a doozy, right? Let's look at the back cover. Again, you got a lot of black, but everything is sharp. Sharp, perfect sharp edges. There's a little bit of a blunting on the bottom again on that one. And is that kind of that's a crease right there, isn't it? You guys see that? It doesn't break color though. It's barely there, but you guys could see that. Probably like a, I don't know, 3/8 inch crease or something going around there. That could probably press out for sure. Let's look at the inside of the book. And these are the more modern books of white pages that I was talking about. It doesn't even open all the way. That's how, I don't think this book was ever read. Super white pages. Let's go to the centerfold. The back is nice, beautiful and white. If you look at the centerfold, like I said, I mean, it doesn't even want to lay flat because this book hasn't even really been read. Super white pages. I mean, this is white pages all the way. Look at that. Beautiful. All right, guys. So looking at this book, we saw the waving, the ripples in the pages. We saw about 4 spine ticks with the one decently sized color breaking one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, about 4 spine ticks with that one big color breaking one. We saw the rippling and we saw some decently crisp edges, but kind of a bit of a blunting going on to the top. And a bit of blending going on down here with that small little crease. So I'm going to consider the 4 spine, the 3 spine ticks is slight, very slight. So I'm going to count those as individual defects. So that's 3. All right. I'm going to count the blending on the 2 edges as slight and consider that 5. But then we have the big spine tick and then that crease on the back. I'm going to consider I think the crease on the back is probably what I would say is very minor. which according to Overstreet would be about, up to anywhere from 1/8 to 1/16 inch. You take that into consideration as about 2 or 4. I'm gonna say 2 on that. So we had 3, 4, 5, 7. And then I'm gonna say that this spine tick is another very minor, because it's within that 1/8 inch. Well, that might actually be 1/4, so that might be considered 3. I'm gonna say 3 on that. So I'm gonna say 10. Um, and then the waviness. Now that's where, like I said, it all depends probably if you're sending it to CGC. But with 10 defects, guys, and I got the chart right here. 10 defects can be a fine to very fine. Wow. So you're looking at anywhere from a 6.0 to an 8.0. And I just don't, personally, I don't see this book getting anything lower than a 7.5. So honestly, when counting my defects, I think I'm probably being a little more conservative with this one. Because yeah, I wouldn't see this book coming back as anything lower than a 7.0, especially after a press. Like I said, if these ripples can get up, I I think this book would be an 8.5 easily, with that one major spine tick. So a couple of other spine ticks might be able to press out, and then with this going on down here, I mean, that's just such an interesting um, defect right there. I don't even know if it's a crease. It's just yeah. See, it's just, yeah. I don't even know. That might be minor. So I may have added a couple more defects than I should have for that. I'm gonna go 7.5 on this without a press. That's my guess on this one, guys. And again, if I was to sell this book, I would probably say, I'd probably say very fine 7.5 to 8.0. You got to, I'm taking into consideration that it's a black cover. There's no color breaking creases anywhere except for that um, spine tick and that little blemish on the back. So that's my guess for this one, guys. 7.5 to 8. Again, uh, we looked at more of a mid-grade to a decently higher grade book, and there it is, guys. I hope that you were able to learn a little something here, take some things into consideration. And the one thing that I want you guys to really understand and take away from this is it's tough. As you guys can see, it's tough to really gauge. But I do believe when you get the hang of it and you start really eyeballing books, you start getting used to what you see. Now, it's even more tough for us when we're trying to understand what companies like CGC or CBCS are trying to do, because we don't have any insight really to their process. So that's why I say, though, using the Overstreet guide to grading comics is very helpful. Um, it's right here, guys. Definitely pick up this book. It's gonna help you guys out. It's really allowed me to be a much better grader grading my books. So again, guys, let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys took away some great tips on how to grade your comics much more consistently and more concise. So thank you guys for watching. Leave some comments below. Let me know what you guys think. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. Be well, and until next time.